I would like to know what life was like when you were young. What did you do for fun?
In the summertime, I went swimming in the gravel pit with my friend. And I went fishing a lot. And in the wintertime, I went hunting with my dad. And we popped popcorn around the fireplace, baked apples in the fireplace in the ashes. I also played football and baseball and basketball. Had a lot of fun.
You want to know what I did, huh, Caroline? Well, let me tell you. We played jacks on the porch, a game called Hunt the Hay, where we would run around and hide from one another. And can you imagine your grandmama scaling a fence, going over the fence and across the roof to get back to the base before they caught us? We used to have king's parties, and whoever got the golden ring had to have the next party. What else did we do? Let's see. Oh, one time we had a wedding, and I was a bridesmaid, and we had it up on top of the roof at night, on the garage, the roof of the garage, and all the parents came and watched us, and we dressed up in bridesmaids' dresses, and the boys would dress up in long tail coats like of their fathers with top hats, and we had fun doing that. What else did we do? Let's see. Oh, and we traded movie star pictures. We didn't have Pokemon cards, but we had movie star pictures. We'd collect out of the magazines, and then on a Saturday afternoon we'd sit on the porch and we'd trade 2 Cary Grants for 1 Gary Cooper or something like that. We had a good time. It was simple but nice. And went for snowballs. Always went for snowballs.
What was school like?
My school was a little country school. It had grades 1 through 6, and 1 through 6, no, 1 through 8. And there were two classes to a room, like of the 1st and 2nd grade in one classroom with the same teacher. It's called a combination class. The 3rd and 4th grade, and 5th and 6th. And I think the 7th was, I think there were 3 grades in there, 5th, 6th, and 7th. All with one teacher. And we had a big playground. We played a lot of kinds of games at recess. We played marbles, chase, softball, basketball out on the dirt courts.
Did you ever play Mumble Pig?
Played Mumble Pig.
You know what Mumble Pig is, Caroline?
No.
That's a game with a pocket knife.
Which you wouldn't be allowed to do right now. Everybody would put their foot into a circle, and you'd throw your knife down, and you'd cut out a pie, and that was your pie.
But we didn't do that very much.
Oh, I did. Let's see. My school, I went to a Catholic school, and it was an all-girls school, and it was a lot of fun having just girls. And I went there through, all the way through high school. I graduated from Mercy Academy, and we wore those little uniforms, those little blue uniforms with the blue bow ties and a blue hat and a white shirt. And we were taught by the nuns, and I had Latin and geometry and French, and I enjoyed it immensely. My school today, Anne Rice, the one who writes about the vampire stories, she bought my school, and she lives there. And we had a chapel at school, and that's now her private chapel. She brought out our whole plant that we had for school. I hope she enjoys it as much as I do.
Okay. How did you feel during the Depression?
Well, during the Depression, I was pretty young, but I can remember a lot of things about it. We didn't have very much. I lived out in the country on the farm, and all we had was the necessary things for life. We had lots of good food that we grew on the farm, and if we didn't have fresh vegetables, we had canned things, and we butchered our own pork and cows. We ate a lot of game that we hunted and fish that we caught. It was a hard life, but it was good. We had we got through it.
Well, I was born in the 30s, just about the time the Depression was coming in, so I was very small when it started. But as I grew older, we in the city we had a lot of hard times, and you worked for 50 cents an hour, so you didn't make a lot of money. You'd work all day and make $3.50 a day, but at that time you could buy a loaf of bread for 10 cents and a quart of milk for 5, and get sugar for 2 cents a pound. So it kind of balanced it out. It was just hard to come by money because there weren't that many jobs. But when the war came along in 1940, things changed and you had more employment and more people making money. And like your granddaddy said, it was a hard time, but it was a good time because you were a close-knit family at that time and everybody pulled together.
Okay. Do you remember the name of your school?
Oh yes, I do. Mercy Academy.
Mine was called Oak Grove Elementary.
What did you like your teacher?
Yeah, I liked all my teachers. I can remember my first grade teacher, Miss Larcy Talley. I can remember her teaching me how to read, and that was a real treat to get to be able to read. And then I had, I remember my school principal, he was also a teacher, was Mr. Mizell. And he was very good. He taught me a lot. I learned a lot from him about world geography when right before the World War II started. We studied Europe, and we listened to Hitler on the radio and talked about what was going on in the world. He taught me a lot. Yeah, I liked him.
Well, I can remember in elementary grade, before I entered the Catholic schools, I had a Mrs. Gosche, who was a wonderful kind of a grandmotherly type of person, and she used to read us stories every Friday. And every Friday we would wait for Mowgli or the Jungle Book, or she read us stories about Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, and it was just a magical time, and she really gave me a love of reading, and as you know, I read all the time. And then when I got to school with the nuns, Sister Mary Regis and Sister Mary Ursuline and Sister Mary Chantel, they all taught us just really wonderful things, and it made me just love being at school, which is why I later on became a teacher. And I had a wonderful time at school. I had lots of pleasant memories.
Do you like how life is now, or did you like how it was when you were little?
That's a puzzler, Caroline.
Well, in a lot of ways, life is much better now, because we have more conveniences. Life is a lot easier. Like when I grew up, I can remember there was a time we didn't have electricity in our house. We didn't have indoor plumbing, and of course later we got all that. But life is much easier now in a lot of ways. We didn't have any television. We did have a radio. But all in all, I like how life is now better. It's easier, a lot easier.
Well, I've got mixed emotions about that one too. I like to see you and your mother and your sister and your father. You're a real close-knit family. And I see your Aunt Roma with her family. They're close-knit, and of course, we're bonded and we're very close-knit, and I enjoy watching my grandchildren grow up. But sometimes as a teacher, Caroline, I look at children who don't have that family unity because everybody's going in different directions, doing their own thing, occupied with outside activities rather than being with the family. And I think they're missing out on the bonding that we have. And I feel sorry for those kids, and sometimes I think ours was better. We might have had hard times, but we worked together. And we loved together, and we lived together, and that was good. I like all the conveniences now. I don't want to give up my conveniences, but I just wish everybody had as close a family as we do.
Do you remember what life was like during the war?
Oh, yes. Tell her, honey, where you were.
Well, when the war started in 1941, I was in high school. And it was pretty tough because we didn't have any, we had several things rationed. We had shoes were rationed, gasoline was rationed, automobile tires were rationed. All those things were needed to fight the war, and we just didn't have very much many of those things. And then in 1943, after I graduated from high school, I joined the Navy, and I was in the war. I mean, at least I served. I was never in actual fighting, even though one of the ships that I was on got torpedoed by one of our own submarines. It was all a mistake, but it worked out okay. Everybody had to make a sacrifice during the war, and then a lot of your friends you got separated from your friends and separated from your family. That was hard. It was hard to do, but we did it.
And won. Well, let's see, Caroline, I was still in school, in high school, when this started up, and I can remember sitting at night and listening to the radio, and my mother would let me stay up till 10 o'clock, and so I could hear Edward R. Murrow, who was a famous journalist, and he would be broadcasting from London, and he would come on and he would say, "This is London," and in the background you could hear the bombs falling, and just the big booms of the bombs destroying things, and he would tell you what was happening, and about the fires in the town, and how people had to go into the subways to get away from the bombs so they could survive, and sometimes when they came out, their homes weren't even there anymore, they had been destroyed. And to help the war effort, we bought war bonds, we bought war stamps. At school, my brother and I used to take a red wagon, our little red wagon, and we'd go around the neighborhood, and we collected the tin cans that food came in, and the toothpaste tubes that toothpaste would come in, and anything that had tin in it, and we would turn it in at a local place down by the grocery store, and they would take this tin and collect it and recycle it to use to make things for the war, guns and whatever they needed tin for, they could melt it down and use it again. And we couldn't use our car because we couldn't get tires for it. The rubber for the tires were going to making tanks. So we put the car up in the backyard up on blocks, and it stayed there for most of the war. And we had rations. We used to wear straw shoes. You could go to the store and you could buy a pair of shoes made out of rope. They were called straw shoes. Plaited rope, and you'd wear those. And we could only wear our good shoes like when we go to school. And when we come home in the afternoon, we had to take off our good shoes right away and just wear these rope shoes. And we didn't have much material to buy things because it was all the material was going into making uniforms for the soldiers overseas. So we did without a lot of things, but we managed.
Where did you live?
I lived in Bush, Louisiana. It's in St. Tammany Parish, between Covington and Bogalusa. And I lived on a family farm.
I lived in New Orleans, there in the Garden District, the lower Garden District.
Can you tell me about your family?
They might want to brag.
Well, I had my daddy, my mother, and I had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. And I'm next to the youngest. I'm kind of I'm kind of isolated. My brother is the youngest one. I'm 11 years older than he, and I'm 7 years younger than my sister, so I was kind of like an only child. They were either much older or much younger than I. I was kind of isolated in the family. But that was okay. I got spoiled. I got treated like a baby.
Does that sound familiar, Caroline? And see, I had an older sister, your Aunt Dorothy. I don't think you remember her at all. I've got a picture of her at home holding you when you were just born. And she was 5 years older than me, and my brother was 5 years younger than me. So I was almost like your grandfather. I was the middle child, but we were a close-knit family. And Pop was in the war, during the war, and Mama worked, my mother worked, Mama really. And we just considered ourselves a normal family, just like the rest of the people going around.
Okay. What are some advantages and disadvantages of now and when you were growing up?
Well, I think we've already touched on most of those. When I was growing up, it was during the Depression, and we didn't have very much. We lived on a farm and had to work hard, and we didn't have all the conveniences that we have today. Those are mostly the advantages. I think we have a lot better means of education now than we did then. I think schools are much, much better than they were then. And I think that we have all the conveniences that we have today. Those are mostly the advantages. I think we have a lot better means of education now than we did then. I think schools are much, much better than they were then. And I think that even though those were good times, the advantages are all the modern conveniences that we have today.
I think what we have today is good. We know so much more. The sciences have opened up so much to the world. I mean, to think about people going into space and things of that sort was just something you saw in the movie, like Flash Gordon back then. It was just an unheard of thing. You never would have even thought about it. And today it's a reality. I always think tomorrow is going to be the best time. I like to think that when you get to be our age, you can look back and answer these same questions for your children and have so much more to tell them than we have, because you will have discovered so much more than we did. And I just hope you have as good a time doing it as we did.
Well, do you remember who your best friend was?
I guess my best friend was my cousin Sidney Grantham. He was about a year, maybe a year and a half older than I. I remember I used to go home with him from church some Sundays, and he had a big family, and his mother would cook up a lot of food. Had a long, long table in the dining room. That table must have seated 20, 25 people, and his mother would cook up a lot of pies and cakes and roasts and steaks and fried chicken. And my Uncle Jim would sit at the head of the table, and he'd have a big old piece of meat in his hand and eating it. He'd look down at me and say, "Eat up, boy, eat up."
And he did. And he did.
Yeah, that was so funny. I remember that so well. And I guess Sidney was my best friend.
Well, I had a gang of girls that I went around with. There was Thelma Betts, who was a swimmer, and Margie Kehoe, and Joyce Archer, and Jackie Graff, and Lorraine Dawson, and Anna Mae Rhodes and myself, and we just toured the city together. We used to put on our roller skates and skate uptown to the Lower State Theater or the Sanger Theater, And at night we would sit down by the wharf and we'd watch the president's ship go sailing out with the band playing on it. And lots of times you could get on the, well, you still can, get on the ferry for free. And we'd just ride back and forth across the Mississippi and eat ice cream cones or snowballs, whatever the season was, and just laugh and talk and go to movies and roller skate back home and just enjoyed ourselves. We were a nice trio.
Well, do you still keep in touch with them and everything?
I lost touch with Sidney after the war was over. He moved away. I think he moved to Massachusetts or someplace, and we just kind of lost touch. We didn't keep in touch.
Well, I went off to college, and sometimes when you go to college, you kind of leave the old life behind, and that's where I met your grandfather. And when we got married, and I never went back home, and then we moved to Leesville and lived there for 14 years before we ever came back here. But Margie died, and Thelma died, and I think Joyce Archer died, and that just leaves Lorraine and Anna Mae and Jackie Graff. And I haven't seen them, but I have Mercy Academy sent me a book with the list of the alumni in it, and I've been toying with the idea that it's time that I got in touch with them and see if we could have a reunion.
When you were growing up, who was president?
Franklin Roosevelt.
Delano Roosevelt. He's the only president to serve 4 terms.
He didn't serve 4. He served 3 and was elected to 4. And he died in autumn.
During the 4th term.
Yeah.
So, but the reason he was elected to the 4th term is because the war was going on, and they felt like it wouldn't be wise, the country didn't feel like it would be wise to get a new president in when this one was carrying us through the war. And he was a very good president. Harry Truman came along, and he was a good president. So we've had some wonderful presidents. But the war was a very harrowing time.
Right. Since Roosevelt's time, they added a constitutional amendment that limits presidents to serve only 2 terms now. He's the only one that served more than 2 terms.
How was government when you were growing up?
Just like it is now, we have the same democracy.
Like, was anything going on in the government?
You mean scandals?
No.
Well, Caroline, it was one of the wonderful things about our government is that as much as it changes with new people coming in and others going out, it stays the same because our Constitution that was formed by our forefathers is so great that there's always a continuity. Even though the president might be going out, the people who are representatives and senators, they're staying in, and the constitutional laws, we only have, how many? Is it 19 amendments to our Constitution?
More than that.
26. God, I forgot how many, but whatever it is, we have a very strong government where we don't have to change the format very often. We enlarge it by passing some new laws to take care of all the different situations that arise. But as it was started out in the 1700s, that's still how it is today. We have a democracy where people have a voice in their government. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't choose to
give
use
us a
it.
lecture. She doesn't want a lecture.
Just ask your granddaddy. He knows everything, Caroline. Go ahead, ask another question.
That's it.
That's all. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now.
All right.
Now the family will
Share.
share a
Chocolate.
chocolate fondue. We're going to edit that out.
Just a little.
Hello, everybody.
Let's be careful and not drop that thing.
One for Caroline. You want one, Amy?
What is it?
It's like a cinnamon thing. One for Grandma. You want one, Amy?
I don't think so.
Okay. One for Caroline. One for me.
Let's not roll one over there. I should have some more
One
forks.
for Caroline.
Sweetheart,
One for
there's
finished.
one that just rolled down to the floor.
We're being careless. That's okay, I'll take it. One for you, and that one's for me. And
You have 4?
so, yeah.